Hey, everybody, welcome to another NFL draft or pre-draft preview episode of Fill in the Mic. I, as always, am Darrin Michael, and with me, the man who's just heard that he will have to be taking over for Roger Goodell tomorrow at the NFL draft in Cleveland, Ohio, Mr. Phil Calise.
Yep, I'm going to be there, folks. I'm going to be there, triple mask around my neck, my ears, my head. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, but you can't come out you can't come out wearing that Jets hat though. You're not allowed. You've got to be like can't be for any one team.
If I'm taking Goodell's place, nothing gets you quicker booze than a Jet hat. So we'll throw the Jet hat on. But I'll be fair. No. I'll be fair. I won't wear the Jet hat tomorrow, but I will wear 32 masks of all 32 NFL teams. Take care of everything.
You can have them in order, and you're just going to tear them off when it's the next one's turn?
Yeah, in order, in draft order. Boom. 32 around my mouth, starting with number one pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we go from there.
You know, it would be really fun, though, if there were some trades. And so, like, you had to do it on stage. Like, you had to, like, switch them up and around. And now that I would enjoy watching. But you know what? I don't know if we would be able to hear you. I think we need to do that on the podcast one day. You need to wear 32 masks, and let's see if we can even hear you or if you can even breathe.
The sad part is I probably have 32 masks.
That's so weird.
Raina has bought me masks. My mother gives me some masks, months ago. The start of it all, when everybody was like in hyper panic mode. My mother would come by with like, oh, look, I picked up some masks for the kids and you. And the masks were like giant adult-sized masks. I'm like, no, they're not wearing these masks.
They cover their whole face.
Put them in my car. I got some upstairs. I'm like, what are we doing? We're going to rob a bank with this mask.
Well, you are in New Jersey, man. You need to have a mask everywhere, you know? Yeah.
That's it, man.
I wanted to, before we get into things, I wanted to tell you something, all right? So Trisha does not listen to our podcast. She does not watch them, and I'm guessing Raina doesn't either. So it was just really interesting that she fell asleep last night listening to a podcast, right? So she wakes up in the middle of the night. I guess the podcast finished, and it just automatically went to another podcast that she subscribes to, which happened to be ours. So she happened to wake up when I was telling the cat story. All right, just I mean, completely random. And so I get up this morning, right? I had no idea what's going on, and she comes up to me, and she's like, "Don't talk about me if you're gonna lie." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Well, you said that the cat guy wasn't around anymore because people complained and the police came and took him away." And I'm like, "Well, that's what you told me." "No, I didn't say that." So it turns out the cat guy is still there, although I haven't seen him when I go there to get bagels in the morning. But the cat now sits on his lap and is not on a leash. So I just wanted to say, for all of our listeners or viewers, I apologize. I was fact checked. I couldn't believe. I mean, literally, I think I can say anything I want on this because she will never ever hear me. But that's that. But just because she did that, I'm going to tell an embarrassing story about her, right? So she's sitting on the couch the other day, and she's like, "Where's your phone?" And I go, it's right behind you on the ledge. So she reaches over to get the phone, and it was plugged in. So somehow, I don't even know how this happens, right? She grabs it. Next thing I know, like, nobody's looking at it. I just hear her crying, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? So when she had grabbed the phone, somehow it hit her in the forehead. It snapped back, hit her in the forehead, and she had this huge welt on her forehead. So I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And it was my phone that she was getting. So I'm like, hey, karma, baby, you should have been nice to me. I couldn't do anything, but my phone did. So you know.
Oh wow.
You learn your lesson the hard way.
Interesting. Yeah, man. This Trish, we apologize for Darrin not telling the truth all the time. We're gonna start getting, you know what? As we get a little more advanced, we should put one of those chyrons at the bottom that shares when you're misleading our audience. We'll have Trish drop in a couple lines just to say you're full of it and what we don't have is.
See, that's the problem, man. When we don't have a producer here, we don't get fact checked. It's just, I mean, it's literally, it's fake news. That's all it is, man. I'm
That's
just
it.
spewing fake news. That's the problem. So anyway,
which is a
enough of
good
that.
segue for. No, I was
For
gonna say it's a good segue for the NFL draft preview because this the theme of this draft may be a lot of misinformation and really maybe not even misinformation. It's probably going to be the most unusual draft of maybe of our lifetime, just because COVID interjected a crazy situation where a lot of star players opted out.
Yep.
Some teams didn't even play. Obviously, if teams moved to the spring or what have you, those players opted out. Weird season. I mean, just a weird year for scouts to get tape on teams. Even the big conferences played, some of them played 6 games, 7 games, 5 games with COVID.
It's crazy.
I'm looking at you, Big Ten and Pac-12. So it's gonna be an interesting year. So where do you want to go? It's gonna be fun though. Tomorrow begins.
Well, yeah, I think you bring up a really, really interesting point, and I think my biggest questions are, like guys that haven't played in a long time. Like there's 2 guys that come to mind that are supposed to be high draft picks, and that is Jamar Chase and Trey Lance, right? Those are the 2 guys. I mean, what do you do with guys like that? I mean, Chase, what he was capable of. What he did. He's just a big physical receiver. He's a beast. So I'm not as concerned about that. But this guy out of North Dakota State, man, he played 1 season, and then last year he played 1 game, and is that Division II? I mean, what is that even considered?
It's D1, but I mean. Jamar Chase, I have no concern over because just receivers by nature, I feel like they're plug and play guys. If they're 4.4 speed, if they're, and he did it on the biggest stage the year before.
Yeah,
I think he's fine.
Exactly.
Trey Lance, I mean, definitely. Trey Lance being as highly regarded, or really not even as highly regarded, the likelihood that he goes in the top 5 or 10 picks really speaks to the fact that there just aren't 32 teams in the NFL that have quarterbacks they like. I mean, it's almost like there's not 32 people on earth that could be good quarterbacks in the NFL. Like they don't exist. So there's a dozen franchises every year looking for someone. And when you have a dozen or more franchises always looking to change their franchise, you're going to be desperate for a quarterback, and you're going to talk yourself into an electric athlete, a guy with some physical tools, a guy who maybe you're just going to talk yourself into one of these guys. Every year it happens. Why does Josh Rosen go 10th? Why does this guy go this high? Why did this guy, you could go down the line. It's not because the player was worthy of being the 10th pick. It's because a team is going to keep taking their shots until they get the quarterback that changes their franchise, and they're going to miss on a lot more than they hit. And but I think even what's his face is a good example. The Penn State edge rusher sat out, Micah Parsons. If you look back
that's true.
at mock drafts from like 6 months ago, I know that's really early. He was like a top 3 or 5 pick. He was supposed to be like the next stud rusher. And now he's all over the map. I've seen him go anywhere between like 9 and 25. He sat out. So
I think that's a really interesting point that you're bringing up, and I like that example that you're using. But if you think about it, these guys are literally all over the map. I think if you talk about 32 guys in the first round, I think there's probably 25 that probably everybody agrees are going to go in the first round. I would say something like that. But where they're going to go is literally like all over the place. Like you said with Parsons, I mean, 9 up to 25. I mean, that's pretty crazy. And you know what? Something else that I was thinking about is, as you were talking about this, these guys sitting out. Think about in other sports. Think about NFL when guys sit out a season. Think about what happened. Like take our boy, the running back that Le'Veon Bell. Like he sat out for a season. I mean, he was at the prime of his career. He sat out a season, and guess what? His career is basically over. I mean, he's just done. And Antonio Brown, I mean, he had a rough time coming back, and I think he's figured it out. And he's not. I don't think he's himself, but I think he's gotten back towards himself. I'm nervous about C.J. Mosley. I mean, he basically hasn't played in 2 seasons. What's a guy like that
Oh
going to be
yeah.
like?
No.
So I do get really worried about those guys that have sat out and haven't played in a while. And I realize it's
Well, here's
college
an
and they don't have as
example
much
that
wear and tear, but
yeah, no, it's fair. I mean, I do think, I do think there's something to that. I think the fact like a Jamar Chase, I really think he's just going to be fine. But here's an example. Was there anybody hotter off of the national championship game in terms of where they were going than Devontae Smith? I mean, it got to a point when there was talk that Darnold was staying with the Jets, that there was mock drafts after that national title game that had him going number 2 to the Jets. And now I've seen him regularly in the late teens or mid teens. And it's all over the map, but he also, was there any thought he'd be the 3rd receiver taken? I mean, it was pretty much he was going to be number 1, maybe Jamar Chase, maybe was going to be ahead of him. Now regularly on mock drafts, Waddle, his teammate on Alabama, who basically didn't play last year, he was hurt most of the year, is mostly being mocked to go ahead of him. Now, I know they entered the season where Waddle was considered the better prospect, but after the year Devontae Smith had, the fact that he may drop and be the 3rd receiver taken is crazy. So, but I disagree with you in one regard. I'm not sure if 25 people, I'm not sure if there's even 25 names that are more or less agreed upon. I think you're going to see some guys drop out of the first round that were thought to be guaranteed first rounders. I think you'll see some trade ups for guys that you never heard of going in the first round, because in addition to all the players who sat out, all the players that played shortened seasons, you didn't have a combine this year. And remember, the pro days that you see on TV and ESPN shows, especially all the big schools' pro days, they're gimmick pro days. That's not the real pro day. The real day is the combine, where they're more on a neutral playing field. The pro days are all set up to be optimal conditions for who they're trying to highlight. Everything, even the 40-yard times, I think, are misleading, because I just feel like everything is skewed. So nobody really ever went off the pro day. I mean, the quarterbacks' pro days were always a big deal, but now everyone's pro day is all you have on them outside of their game film.
Yeah, that's true.
And it may have been limited this year or not at all. So I just think you're going to have scouts team to team that have wildly different boards this year. So I just wouldn't be shocked if there's head scratchers all over the draft board. And you may look at your favorite team as like, what the heck are they doing? But I don't think I'd put any stock in that this year, because I just think it's going to be a wacky year. So we'll see.
Well, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, the draft is always full of surprises. I think the biggest thing that really shocks me is that there's projected to be at least 5 quarterbacks taken in this draft, which is pretty crazy, because if you look at the last 5 years of drafts, there were let's see, how many quarterbacks were even taken? There were is that 18?
Well, we know
there were 18
2018
quarterbacks taken in the last 5.
Okay.
So, you're talking about, 5 is a lot. 5 is a lot more than the average. And basically they're saying that all 5 could be taken in the first part of the first round. I mean, what do you think the chances are that the first 4 picks end up being quarterbacks?
Yeah, well, I think there's 2 things. One is, if 5 quarterbacks go in the first round, a percentage of them are not going to pan out. I mean, you just know they're not. So it just gets down to which ones are, which ones aren't. I actually think that the first 4 picks will be quarterbacks, because I think.
You think so?
I mean, obviously Lawrence is 1 and Wilson is 2. I mean, those are very rarely do you have the second pick in the draft be a guaranteed known commodity. But I think at this point the Jets have shown their hand. So the draft really starts at 3. I mean, you could show up to the draft late and get there for 3, and that's really the first pick in the draft. And I think the big thing is what the Niners do. And I think it's huge for me being accurate on the top 4 being quarterbacks, because if the Niners really take Mac Jones, if they've really fallen in love with Mac Jones 3rd, because he's the system fit that they all love, then I think it's a guarantee that Fields goes 4. And it may not be to the Falcons. I think the Falcons hit the lottery if that happens, because teams will trade up. And now it's just going to be a matter of, do the Falcons because I think the Falcons are okay with rolling with Matt Ryan for a couple more years. So I think the key is if the Falcons are in love with Kyle Pitts, for instance, or if they're in love, I think it's Pitts, but whoever it is, do they feel comfortable enough dropping however far they have to drop and still get the guy they're in love with? And if they're going to try to win with Matt Ryan for a couple more years, Kyle Pitts is probably the guy they want to put there. And I'm not sure how far they can drop and still get him. So I think that's going to be interesting, but there'll be a price point where somebody blows them away and they just give up on Pitts and they say, you know, we're not really ready to win. We need a lot more talent. I mean, the Falcons have went backwards for the last 2-3 years post that Super Bowl collapse. And they may say, we'll take 4 draft picks or 5 draft picks, you know, to move down. And so if Mac Jones goes 3, Fields is going to go 4 to someone. If Fields goes 3, then I don't think the top 4 is quarterbacks, because I don't think anybody else is that much in love with Mac Jones. I think it would be the Niners or bust. And it could be Mac Jones is the name to keep an eye on. Of all the players in this draft, Mac Jones is either going 3rd or he could fall a really long way. And by really long, I'm thinking into the late 20s. I would not be shocked, because you got to love, he's not that athletic. You got to really have the right system, feel like you have the offensive line that could hold up. You know, I just think Mac Jones is not for everyone. So it's going to be interesting.
I just think that it's very odd. And I know you and I were kind of talking about this off the air, and it made a lot of sense when you were mentioning it to me. And you said, why would San Francisco trade down all the way to 3 and give up a bunch of picks and everything if they're going to take Mac Jones, who's a guy that would have been there in the mid-teens? Nobody else is looking at Mac Jones until maybe the Patriots, and I'm not even sure if the Patriots are in love with this guy. So to me, that would be really, really strange to, like, why would you do something like that if you know this guy is going to last for a while? Like you said, if he doesn't go 3rd to the Niners, he could be around in the 20s. We don't know.
And I want to couch this by saying I could be dead wrong on Mac Jones. He might be the next great quarterback in the NFL. It's fair to say there's guys being paid a whole lot of money that study this every second of the day and get it wrong every day of the week.
Always,
I mean,
always.
It's the most inexact science. Why we've talked about this off air. You could go down the big name schools and there's bust after bust after bust in the NFL.
Of course.
What school produces a good quarterback is all over the map. Some of the little schools produce good ones. Some of the biggest brand name schools never do. I'm looking at you, Ohio State, bust after bust after bust. I mean, I'm looking at even Alabama. I mean, for as great as Alabama's been for multiple decades, for many decades. I mean, what names, if you scroll through the memory bank of 50, 60 years of Alabama football, you're going to get Joe Namath. You're going to get a couple of quarterbacks that have had decent careers, and you're going to start to fumble on like Tua better be good, or they haven't. I mean, there's not a lot, and they're Alabama. And we just talked about Ohio State. And then you'll go to like a random school, California. I think there's some of the Pac-12 schools that produce some good ones. But the point is, it's just a crapshoot. But I just feel like, you know, when I look at a Mac Jones, and I know this is your boy I'm about to bring up, and I look at a Kyle Trask. Right? They were both running neck and neck for the Heisman. Right? For the whole season. Kyle Trask threw up a real stinker. I forget what game it was, but he had a really bad game.
Really bad.
And it all fell apart on him, obviously. And Mac Jones just paraded through with the litany of Alabama receiver talent and just talent all around him. And I believe Trask did also have a ton of talent. I mean, Kyle Pitts is going to go 4th. Whatever his name is, Tony or whatever, Kadavius, whatever his name is, the receiver is really good. Florida is not no slouch in terms of the talent around Trask. But I just say those 2 names to say Kyle Trask is a highly accurate thrower of the football who has very limited athleticism, like really limited. It's bad. In today's age, he really looks like a throwback. You better protect Kyle Trask if he's going to have any chance. And I look at Mac Jones, and I similarly see a quarterback that's not very athletic, to be perfectly honest. I don't see a discernible difference in athleticism between the two. Mac is more athletic, but it's not that big. And one might go 3, and one might not go till 100. And I really don't. I think you could toss up a coin, and if Trask hits in the right place, I think he could be better than Mac Jones. I really don't think there's that big of a difference between them and how they'll translate to the NFL game. It's going to be
I agree.
what team, what system, what head coach, like, does it all fall in line or not? But so that's how wild I think this draft could be. You know, I really do.
You're exactly right. And I think the biggest difference between Mac Jones and Kyle Trask is that Mac Jones had a running back, a really, really great running back. And Kyle Trask, I mean, Florida running backs were terrible. They averaged like 2 yards a carry, 3 yards a carry. They were awful. So it opens up the game a lot more. And that's the one thing that I always love. I always love seeing how these guys are going to perform in the NFL. You know, even the receivers from Alabama, and there's great ones that come out every single year, you know, and you say, okay, these receivers are really great. But I wonder, like, how great is, you know, Devontae Smith or Waddle? How great are they going to be if they're the number one receiver on their team and they don't have another great receiver? You know, when you're talking about a team that has multiple great receivers, then it makes it a lot easier for you to stand out, in my opinion.
Well, you're bringing up a good point. I mean, I do think some of the brand name schools where they haven't produced the quarterbacks, they have produced the elite skill position guys. I mean, it seems like all the elite skill position guys go to the same 5 schools every year.
Seems like it, yeah.
And Alabama really stockpiled the receivers where Jerry Jeudy and I mean, there was that picture taken in the end zone of the 2018 national title game where it was Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, and Ruggs all on the same roster, right? They're 4 first-round picks. They're all absurd. And imagine when they all lined up on the field, there was poor 3rd and 4th string corners having to cover these guys. 3rd and 4th string corners at schools that these kids will never be in the NFL.
That's right.
So I think you're bringing up a fair point. Has Jerry Jeudy exactly handled being the number 1 on Denver? Not so far. I don't think he's been an overwhelmingly great pick. You know, you can go down the list. I mean, obviously Julio Jones is an all-time great. And so like you can, you know, it depends on the system and it depends on different things, right? But I think it's interesting. I do think it's interesting. I look at it more the other way though with the quarterbacks. I feel like when you look at Trevor Lawrence, who I'm going to stick my neck out here and say this, I am not sold on Trevor Lawrence like some other people are. I look at Trevor Lawrence and I look at, it feels a little Ohio State like in that Clemson is the big bad wolf on the block in the ACC. Most of their games are played against deeply inferior competition, right? He's facing Wake Forest and Duke and NC State and just Pittsburgh and Syracuse and these schools that, you know, they have some NFL talent, but when Trevor Lawrence is throwing a football to Amari Rodgers and he fakes a handoff to Travis Etienne and he does an RPO and Amari Rodgers is open by 14 yards and he hits him, like, that's not a throw that the NFL is going to give you. So I'm not sure if Trevor Lawrence is this guaranteed Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck no-brainer that a lot of people have said he is. And conversely, you see me wearing the Jet hat. We're Jet fans. I certainly don't believe Zach Wilson is anywhere near a sure thing, right? I'm getting ready to say goodbye to this bad boy that I believed in.
Oh, the Darnold.
Is it coming up? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
There it is, the Darnold. I'm getting ready. Look, ready? See ya. It's gone.
Now you see it, now you don't.
Yeah. I mean, I got to throw it away. What am I going to do with it? So.
Well, you know, it's interesting because, you know, when you talk about, let's say, the track record of Ohio State, and I think that's really, really hurting Fields. I mean, if you look at what Justin Fields did, you know, I mean, he's a beast, right? I mean, athletically, he's super fast. He's got a strong arm. He's very mobile in the pocket. The guy can move. The guy can run. And intelligence-wise, they said he is just off the charts intelligent when it comes to, you know, reading defenses and plays and all that stuff. So the big question is, you know, and listen, again, we don't know where he's going to get picked. He might get picked 3rd. He might get picked 15th. Who the heck knows? But there's a lot of talk about him falling. And I'm just curious why there's talk about that. Is it just that he's an Ohio State quarterback, or is it something else?
No, I mean, so I think he's going to go 4th if he even falls to 4th. if the Niners, if the Niners truly, I just think everybody has to take a step back. I don't really think Justin Fields has fallen. He was never going ahead of Lawrence. Okay, he really wasn't. Lawrence was always number one. Urban Meyer, his medical conditions have magically went away. He believes so much in Trevor Lawrence, right? Mr. Migraine, Mr. I can't make it through another season is back again. So yeah, he leaves programs well off, but always with some scandals and always with some issues, and he always has some medical issues, and he's always back. But be that as it may, if the Jets and Niners pass on Justin Fields, I think it's because they run now the same systems, right? The Niner coaching staff is the new Jet coaching staff came out of San Francisco. They run that system. If they both decided he's just not a good fit for that system, that's the only reason I think he's falling to 4. And then I think you're going to see how highly regarded he is, because I think the Falcons really hit a home run. I think they either get to take Justin Fields and sit him for a year behind Matt Ryan and then turn it over to him, or they just trade they get oodles of draft picks to move out of the 4th pick, and someone's trading up for him. So in my opinion, he really hasn't fallen very far. I really don't think he has. And there's no reason why he would really fall far. The Ohio State angle is something I've brought up jokingly, but it is true. Look back, they don't produce quarterbacks. They really don't. For as great as they've been.
Never have. Yeah.
I mean, they've produced receivers at times, running backs definitely, edge rushers, not Vernon Golson, but plenty of good ones. The point is they have produced plenty of talent across the board. Lots of corners. They produce. They're a brand school. Quarterbacks, they haven't. I still feel it's the same reason. Darrin and they play in the Big Ten. The Big Ten is not the greatest in terms of athleticism. And Ohio State gets SEC talented receivers who show up in Columbus and are so much better than the corners they face most weeks. And the throws that are made to these guys, they're wide open. And so big, strong arm quarterbacks don't have to be super accurate. How many times have you put on the film and you watch Justin Fields or whoever throw a 60-yard bomb and the receiver waits for it and then he catches it and still walks in the end zone? That stuff doesn't fly in the NFL. But in college, these guys are that open, so it's okay.
That's true.
I do think Fields will be okay, and I think he'll go pretty high. But I understand that if he really falls into the teens, if you're right, or some of the mocks you've seen, I would have a hard time justifying why he fell that far. I would. I don't know why. I think it's a mistake. But listen, Mahomes fell where? Where did Mahomes go?
Mahomes ended up going 10th. 10th. He went 10th.
I mean, well, he looks like the greatest quarterback we've seen since whoever, right?
A long time.
At least since Aaron Rodgers, like in terms of just do it all, right?
Yep.
And he went 10th. So I mean, like, these guys miss on people. They just do.
Quite frequently, unfortunately. It's interesting, I think, because if you look at, like, let's take the last 5 drafts, for example, and let's look at the quarterbacks that were taken. In the last 5 years, you're talking about the number 1 guy drafted was a quarterback 4 times. And then the 1 year that he wasn't, it was the number 2 pick, And so to say that number 1 quarterbacks are guaranteed to be good is definitely a fallacy when you look at this. I mean, here's the names we got. Okay. 2016, Goff went 1, Wentz went 2. All right. 2017, you had Trubisky at 2. But then at 10, you had Mahomes. 12, you had Watson, right? 2018, Mayfield at 1, and then you had Darnold at 3. 2019, you had Murray at 1. 2020, you had Burrow at 1. So I think in that group, I think you've got some good quarterbacks, but are they the best quarterbacks in their draft? I don't think so. I mean, 2016 is tough because the 3rd quarterback taken in that draft was the great Paxton Lynch. And we know he is a borderline, even making a roster. He's just terrible. I don't know why he was picked, but that's Denver for you. Then you've got, 2017, you've got Trubisky, but then you've got the 2 massive picks of Mahomes and Watson. And granted, we don't know what Watson's future looks like, but Mahomes is, I mean, he's already, I mean, He's already put his stamp on being basically the best player in football. 2018, I thought was interesting. You had Mayfield 1, Darnold 3. You had Josh Allen 7, and I remember that coming out of Wyoming. We're all like, this guy throws 55% completions in Wyoming. What's he going to be like in the pros? Well, turns out he's not a 55% guy in the pros. He's more like a 70% guy. Then you had Josh Rosen at 10, which is a huge bust. And then the last pick in the first round is the first guy in the list to win an MVP, and that's Lamar Jackson. So, you got guys all over the place. And then 2019, you had Murray, then you had Daniel Jones at 6, you had Dwayne Haskins at 15. I mean, Jones is still up in the air. Haskins is obviously, we know what happened there. And then 2020, I think it's too early to tell, but Joe Burrow was playing great before he hurt himself. Tua's going to be taking over that team. We'll see what he does this year. Herbert was a friggin' beast last year. I mean, he went 6, but I didn't think anybody saw that he was going to do as well as he did. I think he set the record for most touchdown passes by a rookie, which is great. And then Jordan Love at 26. I mean, we're all still scratching our head about that one, and it looks like I don't know if he's ever going to play. So I think it shows the disparity that you don't have to, the best quarterback in the draft ahead of time rarely is actually the best quarterback. So when we look at things, and you look at Trevor Lawrence, I mean, who do you, in your mind, give me in the last 20, 30 years, who are any guys that you think that went number 1 that you said, this guy is number 1, he is going to be a phenomenal quarterback? I mean, who are you talking about here?
I mean, yeah, more recently, I mean, there was very big unknowns. I mean, Kyler Murray was not even thought to go that high until he did. And Baker Mayfield was wildly thought like that was a big risk. Joe Burrow was the very likely number 1 pick. Like, I think it was fairly consensus, but he had one great year at LSU and had transferred schools. You might truthfully have to go back to Andrew Luck, where it was like a consensus.
I mean, it's been that long.
The kid was a 3-year starter at Stanford or whatever he was, clearly a great prospect. You might have to go back to Andrew Luck, which would have been 2012, 2013, something like that.
Probably 10 years ago. I think he played. Didn't he play for 9 years or so? So yeah, it was probably a good 10, 12 years ago. And then before that, I mean, Peyton Manning, maybe Eli. I mean, I didn't know he was going to win. I didn't think he was going to win 2 Super Bowls, but maybe Peyton Manning. And then, and then you can go back from there. But, like look at Tom Brady. I mean, this is a guy that was drafted, the end of the 6th round, and he turns out to be the greatest quarterback of all time. I mean, it's very, very interesting to me. I mean, we can talk about quarterbacks all the time, but I wanted to switch topics a little bit, and I wanted to get your opinion on something, and that is running backs. If you look at the last 5 years, there's been 8 running backs drafted in the first round. What is it with that? What's going on with the lack of running backs being drafted?
Yeah, I mean, you've seen the evolution of, and I think it's a little bit analytics. I think it's a little bit this idea that the running backs have a short shelf life, and so there's more of a committee mentality. I definitely think the younger coaching staffs have bought into the third down back, the third down blocking back in passing situations. There's not a lot of true 3 down backs anymore. And I think that even started in college. I mean, so a lot of these kids aren't prepared to play 3 downs anymore. For a couple of days. I'm short goal. I mean, there's a lot of factors. I think that's went into it. I think that teams have not valued running backs as high. And you've seen them drop. I think it's moving back a little bit. Look at the Shanahan offense. I mean, the Shanahan offense is very good running the football. They want to do it with 2 and 3 different backs, but they put running football. So you're facing some of these juggernaut offenses slowing down, Yeah, and I just think there's been a shift, but there's still a premium on the ultra elite running back. You're still seeing some of them go. I mean, you think back, there has also been a lot of misses at that position where teams moved up high to get guys and they haven't lived up to it, or the shelf life of their career has been not as long. And I think so, organization to organization, I think there's very different viewpoints, but let's look at the Giants in 2018, obviously fell in love with Saquon Barkley at 2, all world physical gifts.
Yep.
Came out and played a great rookie year, and through 19 was a very disappointing year, and then he's been hurt. So there's your last really high, couldn't miss talent. And I think the Giants obviously would have to say they'd do it over again. They could have, Bradley. I'm not saying they'd want Darnold, right? But Bradley Chubb went right after that. Some different talented edge rushers, corners, what have you. And instead they put the second pick in the draft on a running back who gave them one great year, and may never give him another great year. Who knows? Ezekiel Elliott had a couple great years, right, with the Cowboys. They gave him that big contract. He doesn't look the same anymore. He's not Derrick Henry is the guy, right? Derrick Henry's the freak of nature, bulldozer who runs faster than everybody. But there's few of those guys out there. Dalvin Cook on the Vikings looks really good. He's only a couple years in.
Yep.
But I think a lot of these guys, even when you think of Todd Gurley went really high. He really was good for like 3 or 4 years, but that was it. I mean, he had like 3 or 4 great years. It seems like the running backs just don't have more than, 5, 6 years is like pushing it. So, are you going to really waste one of those really high picks on a running back? I think you got to be really thinking about it, because 20 years ago, Travis Etienne and what's the Alabama running back? I'm losing his name for a second.
I can't remember his name either, but I can picture
Najee Harris.
There you go.
They're probably top 10 picks based on their
doubt.
college careers.
There's no doubt about
20 years ago. You're talking about what top, now it's receivers that go in place of them.
Yep.
Now it's a passing league. Now it's 2 Alabama receivers are going to go way ahead of Najee Harris. And when I watched even the Notre Dame Alabama playoff game, Najee Harris was the thing that was why they could pass the way they did, because you had to keep people home to stop him. He was that good.
Right. That's exactly right.
But in the NFL, it's like the opposite. So.
Well, you know what? I mean, I feel like he could be the second coming of Henry. He's got that size. He's not like your typical smaller running back. I really look forward to seeing where he lands. And I got to be honest with you, man, I would love to see him wearing a green uniform next year, with the name Jets on the front. That's what I'm really hoping for. But I don't think that's going to happen. But we'll see. And you even had Christian McCaffrey, who was taken 8th, and we all know he is just all world. He's incredible. But even he has had some big injury problems too. So I think the challenge with these running backs is that they just can't stay healthy. Maybe it's just they're just getting hit too much, and maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's all the stopping and starting and changing directions. I mean, the durability of these guys, I think that's definitely the problem. And it's, no matter how good they are, it's tough to take somebody with an early pick and give them all kinds of money when you don't know what they're going to be like, and this is a passing game now. This is not a running game. It's very seldom now. There's a handful of guys that rush for 1,000 yards, but 1,000 yards is only 60 yards a game. It's really not impressive, if you ask me. So the things that like Derrick Henry is doing is just, it's mind-boggling, because nobody else is really doing that. Or the things that McCaffrey's doing, where you're rushing for 1,000 and you're receiving for 1,000. It just doesn't happen. So it is exciting, but yeah, there's a real problem with that. And that's why in the last 5 years, there's only been 8 running backs taken. Now, what do you think is the position where there in the last 5 years have been the least number of draft picks in the first round?
Probably, when you think about like corners and edge rushers have to be definitely top 2 taken. So
Yeah.
you're probably looking at safeties, centers, offensive linemen, centers that aren't as highly thought of, safeties
Yep.
maybe.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. You know what? You're on the right track there. There were 3 centers taken in 5 years. There were 4 guards, 6 tight ends, 8 safeties. So those are the 4 lowest, and then your top 2 are cornerback and defensive ends, like you just said. So it's odd to me that, is it because maybe the interior lineman position aren't as valuable as the cornerback or defensive end, or are the cornerbacks and defensive ends, they're just ends up not being very good, that they always need to draft more and more of these? I mean, I don't know which way to go with these things. It seems kind of odd to me.
Well, I think the edge rusher is the most similar position to the quarterback in that if you have one, you could wreck a game, and
Yeah.
most teams don't. So they're continually every year searching for the guy who can do it, because you can cover a lot of mistakes on defense when you got edge rushers that are blowing up the game. If you've ever watched a game where a left tackle or a right tackle can't block the guy on the edge, it totally changes the game. The lesser talented team can even drive a team nuts all game if they can't block them, because the second you got to put 2 guys on them, it completely changes the game. So think about the Super Bowl. Tampa wasn't the better team, but the combination of the Chiefs' injuries on the line and the edge rushers between Pierre-Paul and whoever else was coming off the other side was almost unblockable. I mean, Mahomes was running for his life the entire Super Bowl. They literally wrecked the Super Bowl and blew them out because they couldn't block.
That's true.
They couldn't block them.
Yep.
So you're always searching for that. I think the corner is missed a lot. And in a pass-happy league, teams are scared to death. They don't have enough people that can cover. So I think you get lots of athletic guys drafted in hopes that some of them can play, and everybody's looking for corners. So I think that makes sense. I think everybody's looking for edges, corners, and quarterbacks, because unless you have those things, you can't win in the NFL. You really can't.
That's right.
You can't sustain winning if you can't rush the quarterback, hold up in some type of, have some guys who can cover and a quarterback who can can throw. So you could do everything else. You could have the 5th, you could have the 29th most talented running back. If you have a line, they're fine. Couple of mediocre tight ends, you can get by. Like, there's other things. And then the interior line, you need it, but you need right and left tackles. I mean, the game is, you got to be able to block the edge. It's the same thing. You can't get the game blown up on you. So you see tons of tackles taken. And some of them, it seems like offensive linemen, though, are a safer pick. There's not as many busts. Like, if, it just feels like if you need offensive line help, you could even reach on a guy a little bit, and he's not as likely to be a bust as some of these other positions. Like edge rushers, they're busts all the time. All the time.
Yep. Well, you know what, with tackles, I think the thing that you got to think about is if they don't pan out, let's say they're left tackles and they don't pan out, well, they can go to the right side. Or if they don't, maybe they're not an exterior lineman. Maybe they move them to guard, and maybe they're better in that position. So I think that there's other options for these guys. So in a sense, having drafting an offensive tackle is probably a safer pick, because I think you are going to have more options than some of these other positions. But it's just incredible to me. I mean, there's a lot of offensive linemen taken, and it's consistently people are drafting more and more offensive linemen. And I feel lucky that I think we got a good one last year with the Jets. And I like to see those kind of guys work out. Now, something that might shake up the draft a little bit, there was a big trade today, and that is Mr. Teddy Bridgewater went from the Carolina Darnolds to the Denver Elways. And the thing that I thought was interesting about that is I thought it was a good move for Denver, but Denver, all they did was give up a 6th round pick. And I'm thinking to myself, Teddy Bridgewater, to me, he very easily could be a starter in the NFL. I mean, I think that he's a really good player. When he does come in, he's played well. He played really well when he came in for the Saints. So I thought that was really interesting that he was traded for a 6th round pick. Now, obviously that says one of two things: either, hey, you know what, we're content with going with Darnold, or we're planning on drafting a quarterback.
Yeah, and you know what? First of all, I gotta laugh at Elway, just because He was such a great quarterback, and he can't pick a quarterback to save his life since he's taken over
Not
there.
at all.
I mean,
Not at all.
they go through quarterbacks like I go through socks. It's absurd. It's absurd. They never get one right. They draft high all the time, and they never get one. And they go through, I mean, I can't even rattle them off, but it's embarrassing, the list of quarterbacks they've tried. So I think it's a good trade because he gave up very little. Teddy Bridgewater's not going to embarrass you. He's going to be the best quarterback they've had in a while.
There's no doubt.
He's the best quarterback they've had since Peyton Manning as an older man was quarterbacking there. So he brings some stability to position from Denver's perspective. From Carolina's perspective, all of a sudden, Sam Darnold's position doesn't feel as safe. They have not picked up the option on him yet, his fifth-year option. They trade Bridgewater, and you start to think, although I got to say, if the Panthers actually take a quarterback, what a weird position Darnold's in. Like, what a really weird position. Because he's not an established guy who's going to groom a rookie. He's trying to beat the kid out for the next decade and keep a job. So it would be really an odd thing if that's what they do. Although if they fall in love with Trey Lance, that's a spot that makes a ton of sense because he's probably not ready day one. And you give Darnold the year. And I guess if Darnold plays really well, you could probably trade him for a lot more than they gave up to get him.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe that's the case, but it just feels like they did give up a 2, 4, and a 6 for Darnold. If they draft a quarterback 8th, that feels weird. It would make me feel even better about the Jets trade because it feels like they don't believe in Darnold. They didn't give up a first-round pick, but they did give up 3 picks for him. And they're not picking up his 5th year yet, which I thought was a little odd. I thought they were definitely going to pick that up. So we'll see. I believe in my heart of hearts, though.
We'll have to see what the storyline is. I don't know what's going to happen, and we'll just go from there. I know Phil's having some audio problems over on his side. Unfortunately, I don't know what's going on with that, but good stuff with the NFL draft. I wanted to switch to a couple quick topics on baseball. You back with us, Phil?
You hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I want to talk a little. I want to talk a couple things about.
I am preparing for the draft. The Goodell position, so I'm having a little trouble. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I know you got other things on your mind. It happens, man. That's an important job to just be on standby just in case you got to go on. So it's exciting. Madison Bumgardner. All right, this guy he's become a bum, right? He's just somehow he went from being really great to really not great. But anyway, he was pitching the other day, I think it was Sunday, and he pitched in the second game of a doubleheader. And he actually pitched a no-hitter for that game. It was a seven inning game. But I wanted to really talk about this because I have a real problem with this. Okay. Baseball is saying that they will not recognize that game as a no-hitter. And I'm going to say, I'm going to give you a couple things that I read about this. One is there was a rule in 1991 that said that a game can only be classified as a no-hitter if a pitcher throws, the other team doesn't get any hits for at least 9 full innings. All right, so 9 innings is the rule. 2020 rule states that each game of a doubleheader is 7 innings. And I thought this was interesting. In the last 5 years, 51 pitchers have pitched a no-no through 7, and only 10 of them made it through 9 innings. So this is my gripe, all right? Bumgarner didn't have a choice to pitch a 9-inning no-hitter, all right? Baseball has decided that doubleheaders I can't even remotely understand what reason, because I think it's the most asinine thing ever. But each game of a doubleheader is 7 innings. So to me, if you're going to change the rules that the game is only 7 innings long, then you can't sit here and say he didn't throw a no-hitter. He did. He pitched a 7-inning no-hitter because the game is only 7 innings long. So he pitched a complete game no-hitter. That's how I'm seeing it. And I'm going to quote a guy, an ESPN writer, Jeff Passan. I don't know who he is, but I liked what he wrote on Twitter today. The league and the union agreed to official 7-inning games. One team got no hits in this official game. The league and union can come together to agree that a 7-inning game can have a no-hitter too.
Yeah, so it's Jeff Passan. So
Yeah.
I know you don't know him, but he's a close friend of the program, so you should know him a little bit better.
Hey, Jeff, sorry about that, buddy.
Yeah, I don't have like a big dog in this fight, but I do find it absurd that if you do what all you can do, it should not be held against you that the league has decided to arbitrarily go to 7-inning doubleheaders.
That's right.
I mean, and if you don't like 7-inning doubleheaders, wait till you get 5-inning tripleheaders. They're coming in a few years. That's going to be a fun one. But he should have a no-hitter. But I got to say, the whole joy of pitching the no-hitter is to celebrate on the mound. They've already robbed him of that. So if they do give him one after the fact, I'm sure he'll still be happy. But the euphoria that you get from throwing the no-hitter and celebrating has been taken away. And I actually missed that game. I didn't even know what happened. I said to you jokingly off the air, I wonder if he even knew it didn't count, or did he celebrate? Because I wouldn't. Who would even think that? Like, I don't know. You would feel like, of course, it's a no-hitter. Why would it be a no-hitter? So I never, in all the rules that they've shared with the runner on second in extra innings. Now the relief pitcher that has to face 3 batters. I never heard, by the way, if a guy pitches a 7-inning no-hitter, it doesn't count. I never heard that said by the commissioner or by the union or anyone else. So I don't know if the players even knew, because it's just kind of like an odd thing.
They didn't address it, but weren't you telling me earlier that your Mets had a walk-off home run in the 7th? It didn't even realize it was a walk-off home run.
Last year in the pandemic, the 60-game season. So it actually was even crazier. Ready for this? After I told you that, I went back and looked. I was watching the game. I knew they won. They didn't know they won. And here's the story. They got, ready for this, they got rained out against the Yankees, right? Yeah. The Mets always get rained out, apparently. They got rained out against the Yankees. It was the second game that was supposed to be at Citi Field or whatever. So they were only playing them again at Yankee Stadium. So they played them a doubleheader at Yankee Stadium, of which in the second game, they were the home team because it was technically their home game. And it's the 7th inning. They're down like 2-1, and they have a man on second, and they hit a 2-run homer. And the dude had no idea they won. Like, nobody knew they won. It only hit them as he was like rounding second or third. But when he hit the ball, he had no idea he won the game.
But you know what?
The announcer,
that's different.
Wasn't even sure.
That's different because they were playing in Yankee Stadium.
They were, but it was the 7th inning thing too. It was a lot of weird quirkiness to that game. But still, like, you still know you're the home team when they were batting last. They knew they were the home. Well, they were batting last. They knew by the 7th inning they were the home team in the game, recognized at least. I think they forgot the 7th inning ended the game. I think they just kind of forgot that. I'm sure that's not the only time that's happened, by the way, last year.
Oh, there's no doubt.
Somebody else forgot in the 7th inning that they won the game. You know what I find even crazier? You watch a game, it's a doubleheader. It's the 8th inning, and there's a man starting on second base because it's extra innings.
Just go back to the regular rules. I can't take this. I really, really can't.
We may have spoken about this on a podcast months ago. If they want to be gimmicky, and all of this stuff is gimmicky, if I was commissioner, right? I know you got me subbing in for Goodell, but if I was subbing in for Manfred, I would say, listen, commish, let's take the NHL, which is maybe not the most popular sport, but I think really has the regular season rules correct. The NHL, we never talk hockey, but they play their regular season game. If it goes to overtime, they play a 5-minute period.
Yep.
And if it's still nobody scores, they go to a shootout, right? Because they want a team to win, and they need the game to end, right? It's hockey, especially. You don't want to be beat up for a regular season game. So maybe we take a page out of the NHL, which I think has really hit a home run with their, no pun intended, with their overtime. And after 9 innings, You go to 2 regular innings, not a man on second, just regular innings, try to win the game. After 11, if it's still tied, you go to a home run derby. You go to 1 or 2 guys selected from each team, maybe 5 pitches apiece, most home runs win. And tell me that wouldn't be exciting. And you're not really messing with the integrity because you're playing 9 normal innings. You're playing 2 real regular normal innings of extra innings.
Yep.
And then, okay, you know, maybe some of these regular season games, you don't need to go 15, 18 innings to get the game over with. So you give the fans like a jolt, something that's unknown, something that's cool, a little different.
Love it.
You know, I think that'd be a fun way to do it. And I say that, and I read 2 days ago that one of the minor league organizations is experimenting with home run derbies in extra innings.
That's awesome.
So they might have got some traction somewhere where somebody's like, this might be a fun way to end games.
So I think somebody's been listening to our podcast, man. They called you and they interviewed you, and there you go right there. Yeah. Yep. Listen, there's a lot of great ideas, but I haven't seen Major League Baseball implement any of them yet. So there's still time. Hopefully they will, because I think the rule changes that they've made are just not good at all. I want to talk about one more guy, and that's your guy, Jacob deGrom. All right. And I want to just mention a few things about him. Here's what he has done through his first 4 starts. And actually, he just pitched tonight, so I'll talk about that in a second. But he's got, through 4 games, he's got over 50 strikeouts. He's the 3rd pitcher in history to have 14 or more strikeouts in 3 straight games. He currently has more RBIs, 2, than runs allowed, 1. He actually has 6 more strikeouts than the rest of the Mets starters combined. He's batting .545. He's the first pitcher with 15 strikeouts and multiple hits since Dwight Gooden in 1984. And his career ERA of 2.55 is now lower than Tom Seaver's as the lowest in Mets history. Now, I also wanted to mention one other thing, and that is he lost tonight, and he lost 1-0. But during that time, he struck out 6. So he tied Nolan Ryan's record for most strikeouts through the first 5 games of the season, which was 59, which is really impressive. But here's the stat I think that's just going to blow everybody away. It was the 33rd time in his career that he allowed 1 or 0 runs and did not win the game. Okay? That is absurd. And today, what was the final score of the game? 1-0.
This, bro.
1-0.
I lived through this.
Wow.
I'm a Met fan. You could take the J, turn it to an M. All my teams rhyme with each other, and it's been a painful. The Mets right now, there's just like a 1-minute rant. They're 9-10. Their team ERA is so good. They pitch so well. They can't hit at all.
Nope. Not
so
at all.
So for your mom, there's a shout out to your mom, and for you, the New York Met lineup is 9 Chris Davises. 9 Chris Davises.
Oh
okay.
Gosh.
There's 9 Chris Davises. They all hit 180 and they all strike out 3 times a game. The whole entire lineup. It's so painful. Today, I was tracking it as we were coming on. They finished up with 15 strikeouts. They hit like every day they faced deGrom. Meanwhile, they face these raggedy 4th and 5th starters that come in with like 6 and 7 ERAs.
Yeah.
And you watch them and you would think they're all Sandy Koufax and Pedro Martinez. Like, it's so embarrassing right now. They're the most because they're 9-10. They're not like 5-20, but they're the most embarrassing 9-10 unwatchable offense right now. I would imagine it's going to change. Maybe. I don't know.
Hope so.
But right now, there's 9 Chris Davises in their lineup. So shout out to Mama Michael because it's painful. Well, I think I get a small dose of what you guys feel.
Oh God, it's awful. We've been going through it for much longer, but it's crazy to me how that even happens. And you've got your $341 million man. What the heck's he doing?
He smiles. Nobody smiles better. But why
Well,
wouldn't you? He's got $341 million. He's like,
of guaranteed money. That's right. Doesn't even matter
yeah,
how you play.
yeah.
You know,
Well, he's
I'll
already starting to
just
get booed. He's already starting to get booed.
well,
So
he's in New York. Of course he's going to get booed. But remember I think the Mets had an 85% chance of making the playoffs. So they're supposed to be a really good team. And like you said, the pitching has been good, but my God, another 1-0 loss. I mean, what the heck do you want from this guy?
their pitching has been so good, and Carrasco and Syndergaard aren't even back yet. They're still hurt, but
Unbelievable.
they can't hit. They can't hit.
Unbelievable.
They literally can't. I saw it before the game today, and it turned out to be poetic justice. One of the Met beat writers tweeted out, "Good news, Met fans. deGrom's bat's in the lineup tonight." So didn't turn out to help tonight, but it's
No,
that sad. It's that
that
bad right now.
that really is. That really is. And so it's well. Listen, we'll see what happens. I mean, the Orioles and the Mets, they're kind of neck and neck for what their record is right now. Although I think the Orioles have played 30 more games because the Mets get rained out every other day. But I think you touched on something before when you were talking about the triple header of 5-inning games. I mean that's what the Mets are going to have to do to make up all of these games. So 5 innings might be, and then we're going to have another question. What happens if a guy throws a 5-inning no hitter? But that's an official game. So, or like you said before, with the last game of the season, they're going to play 41 inning games. That's a lot of no hitters. So I'm just putting it out there. And last but not least, I just wanted to mention this because autograph cards have just gone just ridiculous. A LeBron rookie autograph card. It was a PSA 9. So it wasn't a perfect 10, a 9. And supposedly there's a 9.5 and there's a 10 out there. The 9 sold for $5.2 million. Okay. I could only imagine what the 10 would go for. $10 million,
in the middle
$12
in the
million.
middle of a pandemic, people. In the middle of a pandemic, who's dropping $5.2 million on LeBron's autograph rookie card? Is it even his rookie card?
Yeah, it is his rookie card autograph. Yeah, it's like one of 10 or something. There's like 10 of them.
So it's like one of those rare little whatever.
They're all the rare ones, But the interesting thing about LeBron, and I'm a big LeBron hater. I honestly can't stand him. I wish he would just play basketball and that's it. But I saw a meme the other day, and it said LeBron James, he couldn't be Michael Jordan, so he decided to be Colin Kaepernick. And I thought that was pretty funny because, he's slightly vocal on everything except for basketball. So I thought that was pretty funny. But anyway.
he's a great player, but yeah, listen, you wish that these guys would be a little more informed before they got on the mic and spewed some of the things they spew, but he's got a right to say what he wants. You got a right to not like him. So
that's right.
The beauty of the country.
And listen, I know that we don't talk about that kind of stuff anymore, but I think you and I were both on the agreement, when you have a country that's going through such a divided period like we are, sports is what should easily be able to bring us all together. And I yearn for the days when sports are just sports and they're an outlet for all of us, everybody that's got things going on in their lives, no matter what it is, political or whatever. Sports is always that thing that you can do. Like you hear stories about I didn't have a relationship with my parent, but we would always sit down and we'd watch a baseball game together, or things like that. Sports always bring people together, and I think being a fan of a team and going to see a game together, I think it's that camaraderie. You can leave everything else out and just enjoy yourself. And that's what I'm looking forward to. I just want to get back to those days where sports are sports and that's it. Let's just have a good time, cheer for our team, and nothing else.
Yeah, well, and I'll leave everyone with this. I thought it was an interesting, I'm not going to get the quote exact, but Dana White was recently asked, the president of UFC, was recently asked why he doesn't really talk politics, and while he doesn't stifle any of his fighters from doing it, UFC does not really vocalize their political leanings or push different narratives, what have you. And he looked at the reporter and said, if you want politics, turn on any other channel. Literally turn on any other channel.
I love it.
I thought that was a great statement without saying too much. I mean, it really speaks and says it all. If you want politics, any other sporting channel to the cooking channel to every other channel is spewing some political piece.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right.
I do think the sport outside of UFC that finds its way back to sports only quickest is probably in the next 5 to 10 years going to see a nice bounce in terms of ratings and what have you. Because I do think in general, especially off this pandemic on top of it, I just think the country's going to want to have their normal distractions they've always had. And sports was always one of the biggies. And so hopefully we do get back to that where 40,000 Met fans, 40,000, well, there's never 40,000 Oriole fans, but 40,000 Met fans in a stadium just cheering for the Mets, and that's it.
That is not true. That is not true, and I can prove it to you. Last year, no, not yet last year, 2 years ago, there was a 4-game homestand against, I think it was Seattle, and they averaged 10,000 fans per game. So they did have 40,000 fans.
That's about how they can get 40.
Yeah, the Orioles. I mean, it's like pandemic. You can only have 10,000 fans. They're like, okay, well, it's about what we have anyway. What difference does it make?
That's the Marlins, Tampa Bay, and the Orioles were the 3 teams that go, you're going to let us tack it out with 9,000 fans? Thanks, guys. Pretty awesome.
Oh, pandemic's great. We can have more fans than last year. This is fantastic.
Right. Everybody that walked into those 3 stadiums said, can I have my old seat? Nobody sits anywhere near me anyway.
That's right.
We've been social distancing for 20 years. No worries.
It's funny. I was watching a game the other day. I can't remember what game it was, but you see like a whole bunch of the seats that are right behind home plate, and there were literally like it was 2 people in that section, and that's it. And I'm thinking to myself, right? If you're buying tickets for, are they really going to make you sit in your seats? Like the entire section is empty except for 2 people. Are you telling me because I have tickets that are way up in left field, they're not going to let me sit 10 rows back because my ticket isn't for that? I mean,
I don't know. I don't know how they handle it right now. It'll be interesting. I think if you show up there with 24 masks on, you can get to any seat you want. You put enough masks on, they'll let you anywhere.
Phil Calise with his 32 masks. First off, it's going to take you half the game to take those masks off so anybody can hear you. That's the biggest problem, because you got to figure how as they expand, they're going to be tight on your ears. I mean, your ears are going to be on fire. You're going to have like the ears sticking out and everything. So it'd be interesting. I'd like to see you next podcast. I'd like to see you with your 32 masks on.
I could try to experiment with it. I'll let you know how it goes.
I'd like to see, I'd like to see your kids on the podcast with their adult size masks where their whole faces are covered. Maybe
well.
You should cut out the eyes so that they can see through their masks.
Yeah, but if you see kids when they have masks on that are too big, it's like when you go to the grocery store and you see, it's the opposite when you see like the older heavy set man who's got the thing and is like, it's up to here. It's like here to here. And like everything is almost sticking out of it. And every time they talk, it's like condensed into this area. And like all the face, it's all falling over on the sides. You're like, oh man, this guy needs a bigger mask. Who's going to tell him? Who's going to tell him? Needs a bigger mask. But,
oh my God!
Listen, it's gonna be fun. We got the draft tomorrow. It's only the first round. I know they've over the years they've changed it. It's the first round, then Friday is 2 and 3, and then Saturday I think takes you home for the rest of the rounds.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be interesting. And we didn't really talk about the Jets at all, but I think it'll be interesting. It's a big crucial year for Joe Douglas and the Jets. We as Jet fans need him to hit a home run this season this draft season. So see how it goes.
Well, you know what, like you said, I mean, I think we just want to see a fun draft. We want to see, I'd love to see some big shocks, some guys taken it maybe at the end of the first round that you didn't see coming, things like that. So if nothing else, it's definitely going to be one of the more exciting drafts because of everything that's going on. So it's enjoyable. My friend, you better get going, man. I don't want you to miss your flight to Cleveland.
I'm out of here. Good
And
to see you again.
hopefully we'll see you, man. But everybody, thanks for joining us. Another great episode of Phil in the Mic. And maybe next time we can have a Sam Darnold jersey burning session. So maybe we can watch you do that live. That would be interesting. But have a great day. Everybody enjoy the draft, and we will see you next time on Phil in the Mic. Take care, everybody.
Take care.